A question I get asked a lot is, hey Chris, how can I put these programming and engineering skills into action with paid projects? When you're looking to land a job as a professional developer, it's common to struggle to find impactful projects with a decent pay. But at TopTal, you'll find just that. Unlike a normal 9 to 5 job, TopTal is 100% remote, which means that you get to design your own lifestyle by picking your own hours and working from anywhere. As a developer with TopTal, you'll get to choose innovative projects from the world's leading Fortune 500 companies and Silicon Valley startups. TopTal takes care of all the billing and invoicing, ensuring you get paid on time at the rate that you decide every time. If you're ready to accelerate your engineering skills by working with world-class clients from anywhere in the world, head over to toptaljobs.com or click on the link in the description tab below and fill out the form. Hey guys, what's up? So in this video, we're going to be looking at Angular versus React in 2019, going into 2020, trying to figure out which one of these client-side frameworks is the better option to get a job. And we're going to be looking at numbers rather independently, trying to make the best determination we can that is considered to be non-biased. And a little background of both of these frameworks. They're actually JavaScript frameworks, so they run inside your browser. And where we used to have a lot of server-side technology handling a lot of things, from data manipulation to routing and URL handling, things like that, we now are pushing a lot of that stuff onto the client side. So these client-side frameworks are built with that purpose in mind, to take more of that hardcore functionality that used to have to all be done on the server, taking resources and causing slower speeds on websites, to pushing that onto the client's browser to say, hey, since this browser can execute all this JavaScript code, which is Angular or React, let's have the browser do more of that work so the server doesn't have to work as hard and can serve more people across the network. All right, so of these two frameworks, I'm going to start with Angular because it's older. It was actually created 9 years ago by Google and a few people from Google. It was kind of a spin-off thing. It wasn't really well, it's basically backed by Google. There's now a bunch of different versions of Angular. When Angular first came out, Angular version 1, it was really the king on the block for a long time. It was definitely the most popular client-side framework. And we had seen others before that, things like Knockout and even jQuery and stuff like that before that. And Angular just kind of, in my opinion, they learned from the models that frameworks before it had started using, things like Knockout, and really made the product better. So Angular was definitely the hottest thing for a long time, but then React came along, and React was created by JavaScript. It was created by Facebook. It's also written in JavaScript, and this was created in 2013. So it came out 2 years later. So when it came out, Facebook, one of the ways that they promoted it, they said, hey, this has been in effect since about 2011. We've been using it internally. We're going to go out and release this to the public. And that's what they did. So as soon as they released it, the difference between React and Angular was really about learning curve, in my opinion. And even to this date, to date, it's still about learning curve, because Angular is a full-fledged framework that actually handles a lot of things that a typical web application needs. But there's a very Angular way of doing it and an Angular code base for doing it. Whereas React is mostly focused on what is considered the view of the model view controller, MVC pattern that we commonly see within web development these days. So here you can see the model view controller Wikipedia article, and really it's about, the model is your data structure that defines how your data is going to look. If it's a book website, then you're going to have things like title, author, the release date, things like that. So you would have that type of information inside of your model. And then your controller is actually going to handle all the functionality, like, okay, how does my routing work? How many web pages am I going to have? What type of template engine am I using? And then the template engine itself is either created on the server, like meaning that the server is executing code to generate your HTML, or in modern days, it's using a client-side framework like Angular or React to then build the view once the web page is requested from the server. So essentially, both of these frameworks handle the view portion of the MVC pattern, where React exclusively focuses on just the template engine part of that, the strict view part of that, and then Angular is handling a little bit more than that when it comes to routing and things. Now, a lot of people will say, that makes React a lot easier to get started with, and that is true. But one of the big differences, and really one of the, I would say some people say this is a negative to React, is that it does not include all the different aspects of a single page application, everything that you're going to need to build that. It doesn't really include all that out of the box, and it's not meant to. It's not trying to. And there's all these different tools that we end up using, like React Router and other different projects, in order to actually create a consistent, like basically a prototypical similarity to Angular. So I don't know why I just said it that way. Anyway, you guys know what I'm talking about. It basically, it's like if you want to do everything that Angular is doing, you have to install this, and this. And Angular is more like, okay, right out of the gate, you want to use us, you're just going to install Angular because we're already going to have all that for you. So long story short, Angular is a much larger framework than just React. All right, so one of the first things I like to look at when I'm trying to compare two languages is I look at the location of, basically, you need to go to your number one jobs website, whether it's Indeed, like in the United States. I think this is number one, although I do have major problems with the fact that so many of the jobs are duplicated out there. Because as an example, some company says, okay, yeah, I'm looking for a React dev. And then all of a sudden, like 12 different recruiting agencies all say, oh yeah, that company's looking for that. Let me make a job listing for that. So then you have basically 12 listings for one job. And then sometimes you have recruiters that will make multiple listings for the same job. And then sometimes recruiters will actually just make up jobs altogether to try to build up a mailing list of potential developers when they do actually get a lead. So it's a very unscrupulous business there. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at this. So if I were to just type React in here, which I find interesting, you get 61,845 jobs. Now, if you look at this, though, this is an ad right here at the top, but it says Automotive Service Advisor. Why the hell is that even showing up? Who knows, right? And then Automated Software Tester, it has React mentioned with a bunch of other stuff. So these are all sponsored ads, but basically a lot of this stuff is absolute garbage. They have to do better. Somebody has to do better with a jobs website. And if anybody wants to know about what website should I make, if you want to make a better jobs website, definitely money in that. But it's hard to do because nobody seems to be doing it right. But anyway, if we look at React, so you have 61,849 jobs. But then if you look at Angular, you have 15,914. So at first glance, you would think, oh, React has way more jobs. I'm just making this bigger for you. And but let's go ahead and drill this down a little bit better. So if we say React Developer and we look for jobs, we have 14,965. And then if we do the same thing for Angular, we get 13,390. So that actually sounds much more accurate. So there's probably not 70,000 React jobs out there right now. There's probably about 10,000 of them. And like at least 3,000 of those listings are probably duplicate. Unless somehow Indeed is doing a much better job than I think that they are of being able to differentiate the two. So right there, though, that shows you that React has a slight advantage in jobs over Angular. It seems like that to me, but then again, I have mostly React experience, so that might just seem why it might just be the reason why I feel that there's more React jobs out there, because most of the jobs that I get people reaching out to me for, it's like .NET or React. But let's go ahead and look at another popular programming language site, which is Stack Overflow, to see what kind of results does this website have for overall React questions. Now, if you put React in here, if you just want to be specific, React.js, there are 170,000 questions for React.js. And if we were to do the same thing with Angular, we have more questions with Angular. Now, that would make sense because Angular is actually older, and there's also more versions of Angular than there are in React. One of the big to-dos when Angular was first coming out was when on version 1.3, that's when they decided that they were no longer going to support it anymore. At least that version, they were going fully forward with Angular 2 using just TypeScript. And at the time, you had a lot of developers that were all pissed off because their companies had built code bases in 1.3, and they're like, oh, it's now going to be not supported, and we're going to have to bump it up to version 2.0, and it's not backwards compatible, and now we have to learn TypeScript. And this was years ago, so TypeScript wasn't even as popular as it was, so a lot of people didn't want to sign on to that. And overall, I think in the programming industry, you're just going to catch a developer on a bad day, and they're gonna rant. Now, I kind of did that with my React thing not that long ago. I was just all pissed off because I was like, you know what, we're having to relearn some stuff to get to the same location, to get to the same point. But in all actuality, I unfairly criticized it in the sense that there were a lot of things in the class-based architecture that were really unnecessary. Having to bind all your this context for click functions and such in the constructor of the class-based component was all done away with React hooks, and you didn't have to deal with this complicated life cycle anymore. So instead of having 5 different life cycle methods all individually defined, you essentially can create one method and then just sequentially stack things on top one after another. And that middleware will just execute very predictably one after another. And you don't have to worry about when is this function being called? Is it being called before this one and all this other stuff? So and some of the ways that I unfairly, criticize React, it is getting better. I admit that it's getting better. But it's also, kind of a fact. But it's like if we didn't really need all that life cycle, then we probably shouldn't have been saying React was the best thing right out of the gate, right? Because if we didn't need it, then because clearly we don't need it because we're not using it anymore. Anyway, just a little bit of a rant there. So people get like developers, they do get pissy sometimes when you say, okay, we're not going to support this anymore, and you're going to have to relearn how to do it the new way. Because that essentially means you're going to have to update your code base because you want your code base in many cases to be in line with the latest documentation and not just the latest features or whatever. But like if there's going to be an overall architectural change, you kind of want your architecture of your code base to be reflective of, the latest, because that's where your new developers, your junior developers are going to come in and they're going to be referring to the newer documentation. They're not going to know how to use the old version very well. And vice versa. So the older guys have to come up to speed with the new stuff, but ultimately we all want to be on the same page. So now another definitive source with programming is going to be Stack Overflow. So if we look at Stack Overflow, you can see React in the end of 2008 had 27.8% of the market share for web frameworks, and Angular had 36.9%. So there was clearly a big difference there of nearly 10 percentage points. And if you fast forward to the 2019 survey, React has actually outdone Angular and is now ahead of Angular. So Angular had a bit of a decline, and we've also seen some new stuff like Vue come in pretty quickly. And Vue is definitely impressing with how fast that's rising up to the top. But this survey is kind of also weird because it has Node, where the other one doesn't mention Node, and so I guess take all these things with a grain of salt here. But this is important to note that there's a lot of React developer jobs out there, and obviously Angular as well. And this is the newer information here. All right, and if we switch on over to Google, I think the most accurate way of being able to decipher this, and you guys can always chime in if you have any opinions on other data points or how we should look at this data. But this, I think, is also reflective of where we are. When React came out in 2013, nobody was really using it. It would get some hype here and there, and you'd see some spikes. But overall, Angular was more important. And then right around 2016, this is, I think, pretty reflective because it just, obviously we've seen with the Stack Overflow data and the jobs data, React is outpacing Angular. And this is the trend over the 5-year period of time. All right, now if we look at the website Built With, which takes credit for trying to figure out what type of backend and front-end stacks different websites are using, you can see that according to this, there are 344,726 live websites using React. That's according to their statistics. And then if you look at AngularJS, they're saying 3,487,631. And I would have to say that doesn't seem accurate, because if it was, then how could there be more React jobs? And maybe it's because there's a bunch of React stuff being developed right now that isn't live, so it's not being tracked. So that is a possibility. But a greater possibility is that the data is probably garbage. But we don't know. I mean, honestly, it's you can only hope for the best. All right, so if we look at LinkedIn jobs, we have 7,893 listings for React. All right, now if we look at the same thing for AngularJS, we have 8,692 jobs. So Angular is now outdoing React on LinkedIn. So what is up with that? Who knows? So which one is the easier one to learn of the two? In my opinion, Angular is going to be more difficult than React because Angular has a lot more involved in it. Now, React is going to be easier because they have been, I would say, making the syntax easier. The React hooks, if you learn it the hooks way versus the previous ways, it's going to be a lot easier than had you have done it, the old class-based system, or even before we had ES6 classes. There was a time actually where you didn't even have to learn JSX in order to use React, and their documentation was actually showing you the JavaScript way of rendering React components versus actually using JSX, and that clearly wasn't going to catch on because it was just too difficult. Both of these frameworks are going to have quite a bit of learning to it. That's why they are highly paid, and we're going to see just a second what the average salary is for both of these. All right, guys, so if we look at the average salary for an Angular developer, it is $110,517 across the United States. And that is probably pretty accurate. That's probably your definite mid-tier. Your more expert level is going to be obviously much higher than that. 150 and above is somewhat rare. Now, like in Silicon Valley, I know that there's lots of $200,000 a year developers. Netflix has a couple that are making literally over $1 million a year. But that's really, those people are few and far between. So this national average is probably about right. And then if we look at the React developer salaries, it's also just about the same. So it's slightly higher. It looks like, I think 766. Yeah, slightly higher, but roughly equivalent. All right, now let's look at the overall size of the actual frameworks. And again, that's actually part of the learning curve when we consider, like, if it's a much larger framework, there's just obviously going to be a lot more to learn about it. So that's why we're looking at overall file sizes. And you can see the actual React library is actually all the way down to 5.3 KB, down from 20.7 KB, which I guess was when it was first released. And then React DOM is the actual HTML portion of it, your actual, really the view core engine of it, the template engine part of it. And that is 103.7 KB, down from 141. Now, because Angular is a much larger project, and if you don't believe me, just go ahead and try to install it, create your first project with a command line interface versus something like even create React app, although they're both pretty bloated projects in my opinion. But Angular 2 here and beyond, they don't really advertise how large their site is, but I would say that from all the estimates here, Angular is at least 3 to 4 times larger than the React library. All right, so both of these frameworks allow you to build mobile applications, and that they basically, essentially React Native is how you can use React code to write app data or code that will work on both Android and iOS. And there's also something called React VR too, so if you want to get into virtual reality, that's pretty cool. So React Native definitely has a project for that, but so does Angular. Angular is supported for something called native script, so they all try to solve the same problem, and here's an actual article on that where it says, is native script kind of like React Native? And they say that, yeah, along with Xamarin, Titanium, even Flutter now, they're all trying to solve the same problems of building one code base that can be deployed to both Apple, iOS, and also Android. All right, guys, so the final thing I'm going to get into is really just overall community support. I personally feel like React has a major advantage on the fact that it has been backwards compatible all the way to date. And that is something I didn't really criticize React for, but a lot of people were like, well, you don't have to upgrade to the latest version because the older versions still work. And they are right. So React has always been backwards compatible. And for that reason, I really feel like the component libraries, like the things we used to have with jQuery where you could just download a plugin for literally everything. Like there's the phrase that used to be around, like there's an app for that. Well, there's a React component for that. And I don't think the same thing can be said as much with Angular. So this is a project for using Material UI with Angular. You can use like date pickers, stuff like that. And it's already all working code for you. However, React has, I think, much more sophisticated libraries. One that I've been messing with recently is this Nevo project. These are all React components here. And you can literally just drag and drop this stuff right in here. All you got to do is paste your code in here. And then you can have your data structure match it. And there's all these different options to just, toggle things on and off and have it behave this way versus that. This is just one simple example, but literally there are in my opinion, hundreds of websites out there that are having all this like React code that you can literally just drop right into your React project. And to date, I don't think I've ever seen anything remotely close that has done a better job than that. And that includes me trying to build my own framework to see what I could come up with myself. And I just, as I'm doing that, I'm just like kind of realizing like the entire component lifecycle, the model that React uses, the virtual DOM, it's probably not going anywhere anytime soon. And the backwards compatibility of the project definitely does allow it to go forward and continue to grow and move forward, regardless of small variations that occur from one version to the next. They aren't requiring you to upgrade, although typically that's what we end up having to do. But I do think that the community is actually a stronger community in the React ecosystem versus Angular. All right, guys, so basically you cannot go wrong with either React or Angular. They're both growing. They both have a lot of jobs. They're both highly paid. You can do a ton of stuff with them. And there's really not one inferior one of the two. I think that if you looked at all the numbers, clearly React has a slight edge when it comes to adoption, and it seems like excitement. I feel like when it comes to code reuse, React is going to win on that one. But really, everybody's mileage is going to vary. So I think you just need to spend some time with both of them if you're just getting started, and whichever one you like better, just go with that and just continue to go with that and try to be an expert in that one versus the other, because they're different enough to where you don't really want to be a master in both of them. You don't have to be. I think that would kind of take away your overall effectiveness if you wanted to be an Angular developer and you were spending too much time with React, and vice versa. Make sure you guys go to my website, codehawk.com. And no, I don't have HTTPS yet. I know like 90% of the sites have it, but I just recently set up the server again. But this is my website. I'm going to be, it's really more of just a portfolio landing page. But what I'm trying to get you guys to do is sign up to my newsletter, because I want a way of being able to get in contact with you guys. And really, to date, I haven't been able to do that. So if I have like some sort of information or a free product or like something like that, then I have no way of getting in contact with you guys without the video. So just go to my website at codehawk.com, and it's going to immediately greet you with a annoying pop-up, and just be sure to subscribe to that so I can reach out to you guys. Let me know if you have any questions or any suggestions. Feel free to leave a comment, and I'm just curious what you guys think and what you're seeing where you are about whether Angular or React is better. All right, thanks for watching. Bye.